Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to be going over my FB Radom Beryl chambered in 5.56. So the Beryl is a 5.56 chambered AK. Used to be the Polish military's service firearm. Lots of good information out there. I am definitely not the be-all end-all expert when it comes to all the different facts. I would highly encourage you to Google it or search some of the other videos out there on YouTube. I'm going to go over the basics of the gun, and then I'll go over into some of the specifics a little bit later in the second part of the video of why I went with some of the choices of accessories that I went with for this gun and my experiences with those. So it wasn't too long ago that 5.56 AKs may be considered to be hearsay. You know, the 7.62 by 3.9 was the original chambering for that. And I know there's several other companies that make 5.56 AKs. Some of them you can't really get your hands on so much anymore. But for today's day and age, I mean, you basically have the Beryl, you got the WP offerings out there, whether it be the jack, the mini jack. And I do have a separate video on my mini jack that was not my first experience with 5.56 AKs, but the one I still have. And of course, you have the Sam 5. And then you got the Beryl. Probably some other ones out there too that I'm just not naming off the top of my head. Well, the Polish Beryl, you know, the chambering for the Beryl, and I do have also my 7.62 Beryl. And you see this one here is all kitted out pretty much just like the Polish military with the Archer kit, I believe they call them, between the handguard, choosing the EOTech on there. Of course, they don't really use the magnifier, and then the collapsible buttstock. When I went to go put this one together, I wanted something that was a little bit more simple, a little bit more traditional AK, even though the Beryls are probably the least of the traditional AKM pattern type rifles. One, to keep it a little bit lighter, keep it a little bit more original, which is why I didn't go with the full kit. But as it comes from Arms of America, you do get the black polymer handguard. As you see here, it is a, you know, pretty unique to the Beryl. This is standard AKM pattern, while the upper handguard is not. It is actually a little bit shorter than your standard AKM. You run standard AKM upper handed guards on here, but you must use an adapter. I believe it's Atlantic Firearms that sells the adapter for it. It's basically a little bit of a spacer that goes back here. It doesn't look too bad at all. I did think about changing that a little bit and decided to change my mind. As far as moving back to the buttstock, you do have your polymer buttstock. Does not have a trap door or anything for a cleaning kit. It is also Warsaw packed length, so it's a little bit shorter than I think what a lot of shooters, maybe not dedicated AK shooters, but shorter than NATO length, let's put it that way. Comes with your standard AK grip. I do really like the Beryl grip, so that is one that I decided to keep on here. And then, of course, you do have the Beryl specific optics rail here, which can only be used on the Beryl. And then I think there was a couple models of the WPP that had the cuts in the front trunnion, and then also has the post on the rear for it to secure down. And that's about it. Again, lots of other good information out there specific to the Beryl. I would encourage you to go check those out. Now, typically, when it comes to barrel length, so the 5.56 Beryl comes with an 18-inch barrel. It does have a 1-in-9 twist. It is not one that I didn't really want an 18-inch barrel. I wanted something that was going to be a little bit more compact, a little bit shorter. I myself don't really care how the 18-inch barrel's length looks, which is why I decided to go ahead and have it cut down to 14.5. Now, again, kicking it back between 14.5 and 16. Of course, having it 14.5, you would have to pin and wheel the muzzle device on here. Debated for it quite a bit, and one of the, I think my biggest hangups were, I've heard stories that people got their barrels threaded by Arms of America. I did also on my 7.62 Beryl, had them cut it half by 28. Came out fine, wasn't perfectly concentric, but nowhere near close to me. I was worried about running my Huxworks Flow 7.62 Ti, but I had heard stories where people said they got their barrels back after being threaded by Arms of America, and it was very crooked. So reach out to them and ask them if they could guarantee that the threads would be concentric, and they said that is something that they cannot guarantee. Now, the reason they stated for that was because it depends on how the barrel blank was drilled originally. So if it is off center, let's just say the barrel here, this is the barrel and this is the bore. If it's slightly off, they can't straighten that out. They said they don't have the tooling to go ahead and do that. So that worried me quite a bit, because if I was going to run a Huxworks can on here, which, you know, their mounts are proprietary to Huxworks, I was gonna have a problem. I wouldn't be able to run it suppressed. You know, I could run my Putnik on here, but not with the Huxworks muzzle device, which I'm gonna actually come back to that in a minute here. Now, part of getting this chopped down to 14.5 is that they do have to remove the front sight base also. Just they unpin it, move it back, re-drill it, pin it up again. Of course, with that, you're gonna have a little bit of a shorter dwell time. With the gas block being back here, you cut off, you know, 3.5 inches off the barrel. Didn't know how that was going to affect the reliability of it, so that was another little bit of a hang up. Arms of America told me they've seen nothing but great results, or heard great results from the ones they've done from previous customers. So went ahead, decided to take a chance on it. And at the end of the day, once I got this thing back, first thing I did was thread the can on there, run an alignment rod down there. I was pleasantly surprised to see that everything was concentric and true, so no issues there. Typically, when it comes to AKs, they are all traditionally very overgassed. Every one that I have has seen benefits from running a K&N piston in some degree or another. I did hold off on buying one for this because I was waiting to see how the reliability, the ejection pattern, the felt recoil was going to be with the shorter dwell time. So I did wait until I got this back from Arms of America, which I must say I'm pretty proud of myself, because I'm not a patient person. Typically, I want to have all that stuff done right away. So did take it out to the range with the standard OEM piston in there. Go ahead and drop some footage in here for you guys to see that. So as you see there, ejection pattern still launches them pretty far, which is an indicator that your gun may benefit from a K&S piston. Recoil felt good. I didn't have any issues with it there, but that's probably to be expected with a 5.56 AK. So ultimately did end up putting a K&N piston in there, which I went on my second range trip and got that one dialed down. I'll drop some video in there for that. All right, so got the K&S piston installed. Currently it's open 10 clicks and shooting Tula 223. The stuff is pretty weak, so see how it does. Ejection right over here. Definitely did tame down the ejection pattern and how far they were launching them. So I know typically with me, when I set up my K&S piston, I do it to bare muzzle, so no suppressors on there at all. Typically running my Huxworks cans and even my Putnik, they're low back pressure cans. Huxworks are obviously flow through cans, but even the Putnik does not have much back pressure, so you typically don't see much change in the injection pattern. So being that as it may, I just tune the K&S piston to where it will run reliably unsuppressed, and then I leave it be. Of course, I mean, I know the point of having an adjustable piston is to be able to kind of go mess with it. I really don't like doing all that. I mean, it's just not worth the trouble to me, because you honestly, you don't really notice that much different injection pattern or felt recoil. So when you do take off the optics rail, you do risk changing your zero. Speaking of which, changing zero, I did test it the first time I took it to the range, and then again the second time that I took it to the range, and I'll show you some footage of that. All right, so after removing the optics rail to make an adjustment to my K&S piston and putting it back on, these 3 shots in this flyer were the first group, and then after reinstalling the rail, this is the second group. So it looks like it did shift point of impact up about 1/2 inch. So as you see there, I did see a little bit of a difference, about a 1-inch shift the first time I went to the range. And then when I went back the second time, interestingly enough, after I made the adjustments to the K&N piston, put the optics rail back on there, zero was pretty much right spot on. So can I say that it's returned to absolute zero? Well, considering the first time it didn't return, I'm going to say kind of. Not really. It's not going to be spot on. You're at least going to double check, but it's not wildly off, at least in the limited experience that I had with it. All right, so now let's talk about it running suppressed. Definitely knew I was going to suppress this thing right out of the gate, obviously choosing the Huxworks suppressor mount for it. I did get a couple new cans to try out on this thing. One of them being the Otter Creek Labs Polonium 30. along with the Dead Air Primal. Of course, then before I had my 3 Huxworks cans from the HXQD 556, the Flow 762 Ti, and the 556K. Now, when I took this out originally and zeroed it, I did it with the HXQD, but I do have the Flow 556K that I use on guns with barrels 14.5 inches or longer. So second time around, I did end up zeroing it with this. The 556K, not a quiet can, at least in comparison, well, basically any of these. Definitely noticeably louder, but that's okay. I wanted just to kind of take the edge off a little bit. And then was interested to see, this is these 2 cans that are rifle cans for me are my first standard baffle cans. Again, the Putnik, which I did not get a chance to run on this yet. First standard baffle cans that I've ever got to run. So I was interested to see how much difference the sound reduction was going to be, the gas back pressure was going to be, and all that type of stuff. Now, Huxworks mounts, they're proprietary, so if you get one, you can't run any other can on here but Huxworks cans. Now, with the release of the Ventum a couple years ago, they do have these QD hub adapters that are hub, obviously being hub QD adapters. They are hub compatible, so if you have a can that is hub compatible, you can go ahead and run these on the Huxworks mounts. Once you tighten it on and torque it down, turns on lefty tighty, just like the other cans, and then this collar will tighten down, and then you're good to go. Ran very well suppressed. You can see with the KNS. Not, as I mentioned, I set them up to run bare muzzle. Quite a bit difference when you start running the polonium on there. Really throws the shells quite a bit further. The Dead Air Primal was not quite as bad. Now, the Dead Air Primal is a multiple caliber can, rated up to 4.6 caliber. Comes with a 4.6 cap. I did buy a 30 cal cap along with a 5.56. I was pleasantly surprised how good this thing sounded. Just as you see, though, it is quite a bit different, quite a bit bigger than the other cans. I'll show you some video of that here. All right, so as you heard from the video and saw, ran very well suppressed. I'm very happy with that. I was pretty expecting that for the most part. So somebody asked me on, I don't remember if it was YouTube or Reddit, but they heard that these things didn't run that great suppressed. Not accurate. At least with the cans that I've shot, they do still sound good. Of course, 5.56 is not a quiet round, so to speak, not hearing safe. It's more like hearing tolerable. I did test out all of these cans with earmuffs on. Did pull one ear up, which was my right ear, as I'm left-handed, so on the opposite side of the gun. No wincing, no ear pain, no tinnitus going on later in the day. I think the only exception was the Huxworks Flow 5.56K, because I already know that thing's a bit louder. It does start to, you wince a little bit when you fire that one. So if you want to run one of these suppressed, absolutely go for it. Again, I guess though, based what I said about AOA, saying if these things aren't drilled on center at the factory, you mean completely centered into the barrel blank, you may not have thread concentricity. So it's just something to keep in mind. Talk about magazines, mag compatibility as far as fit and function. When it comes to 5.56 AKs, there's not really a set measurement or dimension, something that's universal like 7.62 AK, so you can have some problems trying to run different mags in here. Now, the Beryl comes with the Beryl magazines, which you see here are these translucent ones. You never really hear anybody say anything bad about them. These were used in the global war on terror. One thing about them is there's no metal reinforcement, so no metal reinforcements on the lugs, front or back, nothing in the feed lips, but again, don't really hear anything bad about them. So, these things here, they were widely available, at least for the last year or so that I've been into AKs. It seemed like they never went out of stock, but a few weeks ago, they did run out of stock at Arms of America, so I think they're expecting a shipment from what they stated in June. So once they come back in, I'll definitely be buying some more. I think I have like 7 of these. So in addition to that, I do have one of these WBP polymer magazines, which is, I guess, their version of the, the polymer Beryl magazine here. These might have some metal reinforcement. No, they do not, but they snap right into place, no problems. Bulgarian Circle 10s. So these are probably considered one of those most widely popular and most reliable magazines. I only do have a couple of these. They work well in my WPB mini jack. Did not want to fit too well into the Beryl. I did, after working the mag well a little bit, just continuously snapping it in and snapping them out. I did get one of the two to fit in there. The other one still, I guess if I just worked in and out some more, you could get it to work. Now, the AC Unity mags, these things work great. My WP Mini Jack, they fit great, they feed great. Can't even begin to get them to fit into the Beryl. I know that you can file some of the metal lug here to get them to fit. It works real good in the Mini Jack, and I have other ones that do work, which I'll get to in a minute. I'm not going to bother with going ahead and fitting those. And then, of course, the quad stack, just like the other three Unity mags, they don't fit at all. All right, so for AK-74 mags, 545 by 39 mags, you see I do have two Ishmash pumps here. That all of these mags have the pod arms follower in there, which allows you to run 556. These two fit really well. The East German Bakelite fit very well. This is a bit of a used and beat up Bulgarian Circle 10. As you see here, it looks like there's been some filing or some work, or at least some heavy wear, but that snaps in pretty well. And then I got one of these Kyber Pass. Well, I don't think it's Kyber Pass. These M16 AK-74 mags. I just decided to pick one up and try it out. Those fit and function well. All right, so coming back to magazines that work well besides the Beryl magazines themselves, these Bulgarian polymer magazines from Gun Mag Warehouse. They make two different versions of them. They make some that have the metal reinforcement lugs along with feed lips, and then they have some that are not, that don't have that. Obviously, I just buy the ones that have the metal reinforcement. These things are like 15 bucks a piece. I've gotten a crap ton of these, and I plan to just continuously buy more until they're gone. With tariffs going on, who knows how that's going to affect pricing or whatnot. So I do have plans to buy as many as possible. They do fit, they do feed, and they do function very, very well in both the Beryl along with my WPB mini jack. So very good magazines. Right, so before I move on to some of the personalization choices that I made in this gun, I just do want to mention, if you've been sitting on the fence about getting a 5.56 Beryl, I would definitely go ahead and jump on one. Arms of America mentioned months ago that they were not going to be getting any more of these in the foreseeable future. I think it had something to do with contracts with FB Radom trying to fill other stuff for, like, I think they had to do with military contracts. And they may even be possibly shutting down the production lines on these. Again, being that the Polish military does not use these anymore. But I'm sure there's some supplies that they have for other military contracts. 7.62 is definitely being used by the Nigerian military, but I think they have their own machinery to set that up and make their own. But besides the fact that they may not be making these anymore or be getting them anymore, it's a very, very good example of an AK. Never heard anybody say anything bad about them except for aesthetics. But as far as function, reliability, accuracy, awesome gun. So shooting impressions, I almost forgot. Speaking of accuracy, like I mentioned, this is a 1 in 9 twist barrel. So it's definitely going to favor a little bit more of the heavier ammo out there. I did try, when I went to the range the other day, I used some Wolf Black Box 55 grain full metal jacket, some Tula 55 grain full metal jacket, along with some Wolf 62 grain soft point, and then also some 77 grain open tip match made by IMI, and then some AAC 75 grain 75 grain bolt tail hollow point, and then also some PMC bronze 223. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in some pictures here of the different accuracy that I saw. Zeroed this gun for 36 yards, just like I do my other 5.56 guns. And then the range that I was at that day, the action bay, was only at 65 yards. So the groups I'm going to show are from 65 yards. So I am definitely no pinpoint shooter. Not the greatest shot in the world. I can do okay. I know some may question, how accurate an AK is going to be anyway. I am going to also drop in some pictures from shooting at that same day, along with some similar ammo out of my HK MR556A4, which I think is widely known to be a very accurate gun. So I'm showing it for comparison purposes because you kind of see my skill and what groups I was getting in comparison to show potentially the accuracy potential of the Beryl. So go ahead and drop those in. Okay, so that's about it for the basic overview. If you'd like to stick around and hear a little bit more about the accessory choices I went with and the results of them, I'm going to go ahead and get into that now. So, choices. When it came to putting an optic on here, one of the downsides of having the Beryl optics rail is it sits so high, which is another reason why I decided I wanted to stick with the standard stock versus the adjustable stock, like you see here, the Archer stock, which with this optic setup here, which sits at lower third, you definitely got to have the cheek riser on there. I'm sorry, it's not lower third, it's absolute co-witness. You still have to have the cheek riser on there to get any type of decent cheek weld. So I was definitely curious to see. I know I was going to need a lower optic for this, something that's sat lower than absolute or AR absolute. So I decided to go with the Arisaka setup. So as far as I'm aware, Arisaka makes the only magnifier mount that sits this low. So went with the Aimpoint H2. Got the Arisaka mount. I did have the Aimpoint standard mount, but I want them to match up absolutely perfect. And this optic here, the magnifier mount, now I am a lefty, so typically I want it to swing to the left of the gun. They don't make a left-handed setup for this, but what they do is they have it so it swivels up like so, and you can also swivel it down another position. So it opens up the field of view a little bit better, especially for lefties. You see here with the AK, or with the Beryl and the optics rail height, no issue. Sorry, chasing the camera, shaking the camera around. No issue with the charging handle or anything like that. And the cheek weld, not bad. Not ideal, but it's not just chin weld that you need. So with the stock here, with the comb that it has on the optic rail, it works well with this low setup. And then one of the benefits of the Picatinny version of this optics rail is you can look underneath the optics. There's a channel that runs the length here. Kind of see it right here. Through this channel underneath the optics, you can still use your iron sights if you need to in a pinch. Really kind of congested sight picture looking underneath the optics rail, but that's okay. Like I mentioned, the pistol grip. This is the Beryl pistol grip. I do like this one a lot, so I decided to go ahead and stick with it. Went with the ALG trigger, the ALG AKTEL. I believe this is the Palmetto State Armory version. I just go with that. Like I had it in another one of my AKs. I think it was the Mini Jack, because it's a lot cheaper. I think you can get them for like $79.99. It's the same trigger, works just as well. I also have the UL. Some people don't like these because they are a little bit too light, but I'm a little bit of a trigger snob and being more of an AR guy. I prefer that. So happy with this trigger. I will say the Beryl does have a little bit of a different trigger setup, and it has to do with the spring and whatnot. So also how the safety goes in. I do have a separate video out there that shows the installation of a FIME trigger and FIME enhanced trigger into my 7.62 Beryl. So kind of, if you want to go back and look for that one, I'll show you how that you can install one into a Beryl. One thing that you are going to need to get if you do buy a Beryl and you want to put a standard AKM trigger is you're going to want to make sure that you also buy the standard hammer spring. The one that comes in the Beryl is not standard AKM. If you want to put a regular hammer or trigger group in here, you are going to need that one. So if you order your ALG trigger, go ahead and order that hammer spring as well. I got the Strela charging handle. Definitely like these. Put this one also on the 7.62 one recently. Installing the K&S piston into here. I almost screwed up when I did go ahead and order one and get the AJP A10, which is your standard AKM length K&S piston. They make a large bore and a small bore. So for my 762 Beryl, I bought the AJP A10L, or large. So I figured for this one it'd just be the small, and I'm glad I happened to be just searching for one for sale, the one for the 556 Beryl, and came across some forum that mentioned it's the AJP A9, which is the one for AK-74s. So glad I caught that one. Getting the drilling out the old piston, similar to my 762, they do a very good job of blending where they rivet that, tack welded or tack riveted on. So you just got to pay pretty close attention, but not really a big deal. Use a 1/8 carbide drill or cobalt drill. As you are drilling steel, go slow. Just drill the head off and then pound it out with a punch. You thread it back on, no problem. One hint that I would give you, if you don't know this already, is you want to measure, because I will say that in this piston, as you screw the piston back down, you have a cross-drilled hole. So once you screw the K&S piston into the OEM carrier, you just get it to a point where the hole in your carrier aligns with the hole that's in the K&S piston. I will say, though, that the holes can vary, 1 to 2 threads. And then even more complicated in the AGPA 9 is that they have 2 cross drill holes going through the piston. So there's more room for adjustment that you could thread it in or thread it out. So what you really should do is make sure that before you unthread your OEM piston, get yourself some digital calipers, measure the span from the end of the piston to where the end of the carrier is. Hold that dimension, lock your screw down, and then when you make your adjustments, you can just hold up your digital caliper and then make sure that you get the right measurement before you punch in the roll pin. So very similar to all the other AKs that I have that I've put K&S pistons in, and whether it be an AK or whether it be a Galil, and you see benefits from using them even if you're not running a suppressor. Every single AK that I've gotten has wildly thrown the empty casings out into the stratosphere, some of the various degrees. Even when you put the K&S piston in and you just completely close it off, so basically max allowance of gas, not passing through the K&S, but will, put more pressure on your carrier, pushing it back, you still see better ejection pattern, and then you can go ahead and just adjust it down to tune that even more. So highly recommend getting a K&S piston if you have an AK. I think one exception that I've seen to this is people in the various forums, and I've never had a Palmetto State Armory AK outside of my AKV, but that doesn't apply here. Most people say the PSA AKs are gas perfectly. They've bought in K&S pistons for them, and they just didn't even do anything, so they end up getting rid of them. As far as the handguard, decided to keep the plastic handguard, because like I said in the beginning of the video, wanted to keep it as light as possible. I do have the Archer Picatinny lower handguard for it. I thought that I might go ahead and use that one, but I wanted to keep the weight down, even though, believe it or not, the metal aluminum one is not much heavier than the plastic one. What was going to really decide that was my flashlight mount here. So definitely want to be able to allow a mount a light. I went again with this one, similar to, I don't even remember which AK it is now, but the RS Regulate BM1. This one for the .592 barrel. How that was going to work with my flashlight, as you see here, the Surefire Turbo, having it swiveling a mount allows me to get a really good angle. So as I grip the gun normally, I can kind of just swivel my thumb over, activate the weapon light. So that wraps up the video on my 5.56 Beryl. I really like this gun a lot. And as like I mentioned before, if you're thinking about getting a 5.56 AK, I would definitely recommend this. Awesome weapon, great form, fit, function. Never read anything bad about them. Very great gun. If you are thinking about chopping the barrel down, whether it be to 16, whether it be to 14.5, or maybe even 13.9, I don't know how much difference that 0.6 would be if you were to chop to 13.9, if you have a longer Surefire muzzle device on there, but it works well. Still needs the K&S piston. Reliability was still there. Awesome gun. So appreciate the views and the videos. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share it as much as you could. It really helps out the channel's algorithm. If you got any comments or questions, please hit it up down below. I do try to get to everybody who does reach out and ask some questions, or at least makes comments. So hope it helped you out, and see you in the next one.